Welcome to today's Explainer, and wow, do we have a deeply chilling true event for you today. We're diving into a story that honestly just defies logic and plunges right into the paranormal. We're going to break down this crazy incident from Uttar Pradesh, India, that took a completely mundane, everyday routine and turned it into an absolute nightmare. And listen, this isn't just about cheap jump scares, okay? It's really a look at how a single fleeting moment can completely fracture someone's reality. Every single detail matters here, so let's just get right into it.
So, can helping a stranger cost you dearly? It's a question that kind of strikes right at the core of human nature, doesn't it? I mean, we're all taught to be empathetic, to extend a helping hand to those in need, especially the elderly. But what if that completely natural instinct for compassion actually becomes the catalyst for your own personal terror? Keep that thought right in the back of your mind as we go. We are about to unpack a case where a pure, innocent act of humanity ended up inviting something deeply malevolent into a young boy's life.
All right, part one, that evening at the bus stop. So our protagonist here is Raat. He lived in Uttar Pradesh, and at the time, he was just 15 years old. And honestly, this age is super significant. He's 15, right? So he's navigating school, extra classes. He's old enough to travel around independently, but still young enough to be pretty vulnerable. So he had just wrapped up his tuition classes and was sitting at a local bus stop, just waiting for his usual ride home. It's one of those liminal spaces, just a normal place of waiting and transition. But on this incredibly ordinary evening, it was about to turn into something far, far darker.
The whole evening really unfolds innocently enough. Raat is just waiting for his bus as the sun starts going down, but moments later, his attention gets pulled toward an old woman sitting nearby, and she is just weeping bitterly. Driven by pure human empathy, because, of course, what would you do, Raat walks over and offers her his bottle of water. It's just a kind, innocent gesture from a teenager trying to comfort an elder. But in this story, that simple act of giving actually creates a terrifying bridge to the unknown.
Let's move on to part two, the terrifying old woman.
This situation takes a very sharp, very dark turn the absolute second Raat extends his hand. All that vulnerability from the crying woman, it completely evaporates. First off, the weeping stops. Instantly. Then, she locks eyes with him, and she delivers this gaze that is so terrifying, Raat instinctively takes 2 steps backward. But here is where the physical laws of reality just completely break down. As she rises to approach him, Raat realizes, with absolute horror, that her legs are broken. Guys, she isn't walking, she is literally hovering slightly above the ground.
And then, she actually speaks to him. She says, "Do you know where my husband is? Tell me right now, or else it won't be good for you." Just imagine hearing those words, and they weren't spoken with grief either. They were delivered with this menacing, urgent threat. This entity is directly targeting Raat, demanding answers for a crime he literally knows nothing about. At this point, any lingering illusion of safety is just completely shattered.
Now, the natural human response to an apex predator, or, in this case, a literal supernatural threat, is fight or flight. And for a 15-year-old kid faced with a floating entity, the only real option is flight. Overcome by a level of terror he had never, ever experienced before, Raat just drops the water bottle he was holding out to her. He abandons it right there on the pavement, and he sprints. He runs continuously, not even daring to stop or look over his shoulder, until he finally reaches the physical safety of his own house.
Which brings us to part 3.
At 2 a.m.
Okay, so Raat had sprinted all the way home. He's physically safe, sure, but psychologically, he is still totally trapped at that bus stop. After hours of pacing and just trying to rationalize the completely irrational, exhaustion finally takes over and he falls asleep. But then, at exactly 2 a.m., in the absolute stillness of his own safe haven, he is violently jolted awake. It's a weeping sound. And it's not coming from outside his window either. It's inside. It is the exact same agonizing weeping from the bus stop echoing right there, inside his own bedroom.
And this is where it gets truly wild. The old woman from the bus stop, she is now sitting directly on Raat's bed. But the most disturbing detail here, the ultimate corruption of his reality, is what she's actually holding. In her hands is the exact same water bottle Raat had abandoned miles away on the pavement. But get this, the clear water he had offered out of kindness, it's gone. The bottle is now completely filled with blood. His totally innocent gesture had been twisted into something utterly macabre.
Everything escalates in literally a fraction of a second. She stops weeping, lunges right at Raat, and violently grabs his throat, trying to choke him.
And she's repeatedly screaming this accusation at him, insisting that he murdered her husband. Her face is completely terrifying, possessing this hungry, almost feral expression. It was so monstrous that Raat genuinely felt like she was going to eat him alive right then and there. It's just a completely chaotic life-or-death struggle against impossible supernatural strength.
All right, moving to part 4, truth or nightmare.
So while he's desperately fighting for breath, Raat somehow manages to let out these terrified screams that just echo all through the house. His parents immediately scramble out of bed and rush blindly into his room. They burst through the door and slam the light switch. And the very instant, literally the second that artificial light floods the room, the entity is gone. She just vanishes into thin air, leaving absolutely no physical trace behind. All that's left is a severely traumatized 15-year-old boy sitting on his bed, just gasping for air in absolute shock.
But what happens next is just a massive, heartbreaking disconnect. Raat knows what he saw, right? He knows it was real. He tearfully explains every single detail of the attack to his parents. But his parents, who are obviously desperate to find some sort of rational anchor in all this, logically deduce that their son just had an incredibly vivid, awful nightmare. They completely dismiss the supernatural element. So Raat actually survived a paranormal attack, but now he has to carry the heavy burden of that truth completely alone.
In the aftermath of this event, it wasn't just some temporary scare. That night left a permanent, life-altering impact on Raat's entire routine. He remained in a state of deep fear and anxiety for months afterward. The psychological toll was so incredibly heavy that he actually ended up completely quitting his tuition classes. He permanently altered his day-to-day life just to ensure that he would never ever have to travel on that specific bus route again.
So we are really just left with one single lingering question here. Who was that woman? Was she some kind of spirit tethered to that specific bus stop, forced to relive a tragic loss over and over? And why on earth did she attach herself to a teenager whose only fault was showing her a tiny sliver of kindness? We are left without a neat resolution today, which I think serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying encounters are the ones that remain utterly unexplained. Definitely think about that the next time you find yourself waiting alone at a bus stop in the evening. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.